Okay. Rambam Bekius of the season. Hilchos Deios, correct above. But first, mitzvah in the Sefer mitzvos, which is mitzvah slotase reish nun vav. Reish nun vav. Okay. A mitzvah hashesh v'hachamishim u'matzayim. The 256th mitzvah. Last page. Ha'azhara shu'uzharnu milahachbid al hayisomim v'ha'almanos is the prohibition to, how would you call it, lahachbid? That would be lachabed. Same shorish, but different usage.
Honor yourself?
Nope. That's how you use honor. No. To weigh upon.
Oh.
Kabed, like heavy.
Right. Got it.
So to weigh upon the orphans and the widows.
To weigh upon.
Yeah. So he'll elaborate. Who amru, what does the footnote 94 say? 94. Gulpa. Conducting yourself with arrogance, cruelty, and power. I'm trying to think if there's a good English word for that. Yeah, it's yeah. Yeah. Fusarno, yeah.
Like what?
You could use the word oppress, maybe.
Yeah, that's the same kind of
Press. Yeah. So as it says, you shall not afflict any widow or orphan. Lavze kolel. So this lo tase include that you should not weigh upon them. Lo b'dibur v'lo b'masa, not in speech nor in action. Ela yidaber imaham devarim rakim v'nochim b'yoser. You should speak with them in excessively soft and pleasant ways. V'yisasek imahim ba'ofen hatov b'yoser. And you should involve yourself with them in the best possible way. Not how many excess words he says, by the way, in this whole thing, and relate to them in the best possible way. And you should go overboard with all these things. Okay, so it's not just, so it is interesting. He expresses it all in terms of positives. I mean, not all, but like saying, you shouldn't do this stuff, but it's not just that it's usher to afflict them. You have to go overboard in the other direction. Yeah. And someone who's not careful with these things, which is also a funny way to say it, someone who's not careful with any of these things, right? Not someone who afflicts them, but someone who's not careful with these things. Which would seem to imply that, let's say you just treat them the way you treat anyone else, but you don't mistreat them, that's also, then you're over the Slav. Yeah.
This whole way of relating
Way. Yeah.
that he's talking about seems to it seems like this itself would be a painful thing for them. If you're being excessively soft spoken with them, or if you're really treating them very differently,
Mm-hmm.
that seems like it would be painful for them, because then you're calling attention to the fact that they're a widow or an orphan.
So what do you think about that? It's a good question.
Another way at that point,
Yeah.
In front of me, want that in front of Andrew,
Right.
I didn't know the halacha, I know the halacha.
Right.
I didn't know the halacha, and I didn't realize I couldn't for them.
Mm-hmm. For the fact that they know
the
halacha, special treatment. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And just before we answer the question, yesterday, when I was talking about the mentality of the ger, that's also a thing, is that I used to be, again, this kind of wore off, but when I first converted and people would treat me nicely, then I would always be suspicious that it was because of that, and I realized people aren't mocking off the mitzvah, but I can see it being a thing here, yeah.
But I do think by ger there's specifically a reason not to do this, which is that, I don't know, I forgot if the mitzvos are figured out, but the fact that the ger's whole issue is that he feels like he's not part of it.
Right.
He's different.
Right.
So if you
Accentuate the difference.
Right, he wants you to treat him
right.
the same.
Yeah.
But their problem is not that they're different. It's that they're lowly.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So
you're answering it from the the approach you're taking is from the psychological
Yeah.
state perspective. Yeah. I think my answer factors that in, but the answer is that it factors it in. The answer is that I think if that's how you'd be doing it, then like class, this is Bruce. His parents were shot outside of a theater. Then like that's not gonna be sensitive to the needs of the. I had to wait a little bit. Yeah. You thought I was saying Lee. No. That's funny. I didn't even think that. Yeah.
Everyone, but
But
that one.
yeah. Sorry, that was my fault. But that would be calling attention to in a way that would afflict them. And the whole mitzvah is to not afflict them. So I assume that the way you would do it is to do it in a way that like is a like I got your kid, but without like but like wink, like without the other people knowing that you're without the other kids in the class knowing that. Because then you're just gonna get beat up.
So I guess it's like it's that you're being extra sensitive to them because they're like extra like careful with them because they're more sensitive to things. But not in a way where it's like, but you're not like doing it in like an overt way.
It might depend on the person.
Yeah, it depends on the person and the circumstances, but I think I'm essentially answering your question by saying that any way that you would implement this that would afflict them would be prohibited by this very low tase. And I think that what you were saying about like there being a difference in their mentality. First of all, an orphan is different than a widow. So like even that you have to like take into account. Like
Why is it more mitzvah?
that's a good question. That is a good question.
They are in the same. I mean, maybe the way you would approach them is a little different.
Yeah.
But they are in the same state of like being the bottom of society. And
Right.
Not,
Yeah, that's one is in terms of like their social clout or status or whatever, and they're also like at a disadvantage usually in terms of support and work and all this other stuff. But then there's also, I feel like there's a element. I don't know if this is true, but I feel like there's an element of and I think this will be borne out in the halachos, because there's an element of the pain of losing a parent or a I was gonna say spouse, but it's a widow, right now, a widower. So I guess that kind of pokes a hole in the theory. But I mean, maybe it's different for the guy.
It's the losing a loved one plus being like thrust into a situation where now they have to like be like financially independent,
Right.
And like managing everything.
Yeah. I think that's a good intuition.
I
Yeah.
just had a thought that is sort of tangentially,
Mhm.
but there's like a lot of cooking that have like Yisrael Mamana and like Levian.
Right.
Like mixed in.
Right.
So and like the Levian are like that's because like I'm assuming it's like they're kind of like they don't have land and
Right.
like downtrodden.
Yeah.
Whatever.
It's weird, like aristocratically downtrodden,
Yeah.
right? Because they're in a higher position, but socially and financially they're lower. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. So I was just thinking like there's that I think also like something a niyam biman desidar
Oh yeah,
or whatever.
I know what you're talking about. Is it he's out? Is it be careful with that?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So I don't know. I just had this tangential thought that like that's relating to the Levian because they're the ones who like teach Torah and like
Yeah.
they're
Is there another thing like that with orphans, or am I imagining this?
I don't know.
Yeah. It is interesting what you mentioned Levine, because I thought you were going to say, because we were saying this earlier, Gary, Yatam, and Almana are often paired, but then you're right, Levine are also sometimes paired with that, and they'll seem different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a hashkafa for all of them except Levine. Or maybe this.
I think there is definitely one for Levine. It's at the end of Hilchos Shemitah V'Yovel, I think.
Oh yeah.
Is it Shemitah V'Yovel?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. But it's different hashkafa. Yeah.
What do you mean?
It's different than the one for Yasam and Almana, different from the one for the Ger. Yeah, we'll see the one for the Yasam and Almana in this next sentence. Umishalo nizhar b'davar elu over Allah halavazeh. Ukvar ber yisal onesh ha'over al halavazeh, which I don't think, does the Rambam always mention the onesh when there's a non-Beis Din onesh? I don't think so. I don't know how many cases there are non-Beis Din onesh, but he says the Torah already promises the onesh for this law. I don't know what kind of conjugation this is. V'hu'idu Who Ido, which the footnote says he testifies. Who Amru Isaleh. So let me just read the actual pasuk which I opened here. So this is the full pasuk says. Kol almanav yatan lo ta'anun, or the three psukim. Every widow and orphan you shall not afflict. Im anes ano. So if you will surely afflict them, im ta'ok yitzak elai. If they will call out to me, shamoa eshma ta'ak. So I will certainly hear their outcry. And then here's the punishment: v'chara api, and my anger will flare. V'haragdi eschem, and I will kill you. B'charev, with the sword. V'hayunu shechem amanot uvnechem yisomim. And your wives will be widows, and your children will be orphans. That's a pretty strong owner. Yeah. And I saw, I know this is not Rambam Bekius, but I actually looked at Avram and Rambam first, but I didn't get an explanation from him. But I saw an interesting thing in Shadal, which I'll mention just because it's, I think it's actually related to the mitzvah itself. So Shadal says, al derech ki gerim hayisem, in the same manner as you were, don't afflict the ger because you were gerim in the land of Egypt. So what's the idea behind whenever God says that? Like, because you were gerim in the land of Egypt.
Like, don't think you're special. Don't think you're special.
Yeah.
Like that you are another kind of person other than, like, you're not a giver.
Right. So it's preventing the sectioning yourself off and then promoting empathy and compassion. Like I'm trying to beam right now at the So he says samach al hargashas halev is relying on the compassion of the heart. V'tzir lifnehem efsharus heyos neshehem amanos uvneim yisomim. It's depicting for them, tzir, imagery, depicting before them the possibility of their wives becoming widows and their children becoming orphans. The al yedei kain, and through this, yichmaru rachamehem al hayasam almana. Then their own mercy will be aroused over the orphan and the widow. So it's an interesting move here. The Torah is saying, if you don't do this, I will make your kids and wives into orphans and widows. And then you're like, and then you imagine what that's like, and then that makes you feel towards the
people. It's like a preemptive media.
Yes, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To me, I was like, that's an interesting strategy that I wonder how often the Torah uses that in Onshin.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right. I guess it would have the same effect afterward also. Like,
yeah. It's just they're like, you're kind of stuck. Well, it won't have the same effect on you because you'll be dead.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. yeah. But it is an interesting thing, which might be why he's taking it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, still could be punishment, but like if punishments are didactic, then yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so let's look at the halachos.
Yeah.
Okay. Halacha Yud 1. Chayav Adam. Oh, sorry. No. Yeah, you're looking at the minyan of mitzvos. Okay, so don't afflict them, and then in our koteres, it says, not to afflict downtrodden people. I think that's amelalim are. Yeah. Amelalim is the footnote guy says downtrodden spirit, and that includes the Yosem. I think even at the end of Hilchos Megillah, right? That the way of the Shekhinah is to care for the downtrodden, and he uses the word amelalim. So it's the people in the lower rung. I mean, that's another thing also, by the way, is like philosophically, this mitzvah applies to any downtrodden person, but halakhically, it's only Yosem.
What's the idea of the Shekhinah?
That's a good question. That seems relevant to Hilchos Deios. Yeah, it's a good question. He quotes the pasuk there, which maybe we can look at it if need be. Lahachil ruach shvalim something levnit kaim. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Chayav adam lihizahir b'yisomim v'almanos. Person is, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pretend that there's an almana driving that truck around. Maybe there is. Yeah, could be.
There's also husband of someone who's driving the truck, and if you want it to
that's
die,
true.
But if he died,
that's true. Yeah, that's true. It's hard. When we talk about the Milchamos Achayim, it's right now. Yeah. Okay. A person is obligated to be careful with the orphans and the widows. Because their soul is exceedingly lowly, and their spirit is very also Namoth is low, right? Afal pi shein bali mamon. Oh, so it's interesting. So he Davka goes out of the way to rule out the financial thing, meaning even if they're bali mamon, right? So it does seem to have to do then with the loss or the status of being in that position. Afilu almanato shel melech, the yisoma shel melech, even the widow of a king or the orphans of a king. So that's also bringing it into the social. Mutarim anu aleim, we are warned about them. Shnemar kol almanav yasam losanin. Okay, so that's a good deal. I was wondering when we read the passage why it says kol. So it means that this is something that's common to all widows and orphans.
Yeah.
Right. That is very interesting. Yeah, that is, I mean, it is a rationalization a person can make to not treat them with mercy. It's like, okay, fine. So like, the kid is, he's pretty plain, right? He's gotten millions, but it's not that's not what's the cause of their loss or of their feeling. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. You say you have a thought on it, or you're asking?
Yeah, how are they on law?
Like, how are you in the same category then? You're saying the one in the same category is not like they're in the same like that happen.
Are you asking
independent now? And I think like even if that's not an issue.
Well, are you asking how the
I'm asking how many Almana and independent are one.
Okay, yeah, right.
But also, Alon doesn't seem like an accurate way. Like the Ram seemed to be trying to put them in one category by saying
right
Alon.
In the Koseris.
Yeah. But that doesn't seem to apply.
No, I'm saying that it applies, but not in terms of social standing, in terms of their emotional state. Mm-hmm. That they lost a parent or they lost a husband.
I'm saying it's the same loss.
I don't know if it's the same because it is a different relationship that that you have with a parent than when you have with that she has with a husband. But like, right. I mean, but is it not a category that you can see that like, I mean, let's take, for example, a family that the husband dies and now the kids and the mom are in this thing where like they're, this dear person in their family that was like the central thing died. Like I can see a commonality. I mean, it's not the exact same emotion, but I don't think it's that hard to see a commonality. Yeah. I guess I'm not. The question could be. I still think it's a good question. Why Dafka these two? Like, why is the mitzvah not just Ha'al Melalim? But I don't have a problem seeing the fact that these.
Yeah, isn't more yeah. And not only
right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I am curious from that angle why he did phrase it as Amelalim if Amelalim includes others. Yeah.
Well, couldn't it be that like this mitzvah is telling you a fetish that like you should, not oppress them even if they're in high social.
Yeah.
And if you said Amalam, like that on the surface sounds like it just means social lowliness or
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So, like it's saying not. Yeah, of course, it's being nice to low people.
So then the Amilalim is then identifying given the parameters of the mitzvah, it's identifying the quality that makes them the recipient of this mitzvah. Meaning it's not the mammon and it's not the social stuff. It's the fact that they have this type. They're an Amilalim in this type of emotional state. Yeah. Yeah, is a good psychological question. I don't know.
That's not a question on the structure of the mitzvah, right? Because the mitzvah can very easily just say these two. Right,
just in the same way that the mitzvah says these are the 7 people who you do avelos for. Like, well, what if it's like a really good friend or a really close uncle? Like, yeah. Okay, the half no game on. How could you conduct yourself with them? Lo yadaber alehem ela rakos. You should only speak with them gently. V'lo yinhog behen ela minhag kavod. So that's something he didn't mention in the sermon. You should only conduct yourself towards them in a respectful or honorable way. V'lo yachiv gufan. Respecting them, yes. Below yachiv gufam, you should not pain their bodies avoda with labor. Below libam b'dvarim, not their heart with words. V'yachuf al mamonim yachter mimamon atmo, and you should have more concern for their money than you do on your own money. I think that I assume that's what we're talking about, like with child labor, right? Like if you're working them, then you shouldn't like work them in a way that causes them pain or difficulty. Right, I assume, the yachiv gufan ba'avoda is like working in the field,
Let's say you hire
selling papers.
Let's say you hire an orphan as like a servant, You can have them, let's say, like pouring drinks or something, but
Right.
not like digging the field.
Right, something like that. Yeah.
When did you say before that go back to the second mitzvah thing? You said before that the you doesn't bring down the
I was wondering out loud. I was thinking, does he bring down punishments that are not based in punishments? Like if the
Right.
Torah says like a consequence of doing something. Let's say, for example, like, by a raya. Well, rayos will have their own punishment. But let's say like, I don't know, and the land will vomit you out, or like, or you'll make your souls tame. Like does he bring that kind of thing down?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know the answer. I was just wondering out loud.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have a thought on why
Yeah.
that's like an essential part of the mitzvah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's sort of like when the Torah says like ani Hashem or whatever, like that like this is the kind of thing where like you almost can't like societally enforce it.
Yeah.
sort of, because like these people are downtrodden and no one really cares about them.
Right.
Or they're not,
Right.
they're not, you can't like it's very easy to get away with.
Yeah.
You need to have some kind of, type of punishment for that.
Right. I guess that's my question though more is like, so you're arguing that this is, well, when the Rambam says what you do in the Sefer Mitzvos, what he's doing in the Sefer Mitzvos is explaining what the Shem HaMitzvah is.
Yeah.
You're saying like this is part of understanding what this mitzvah is, as
Yeah.
opposed to, let's say, like a reward or a punishment that you get. Like, let's say, for example, Laman Yarich Yamin, Orach Yamin for Kibbutz Ein. That is a reward for the mitzvah, but that's not part of understanding what the mitzvah is.
Right.
You're saying this is part of the mitzvah because it is
Like it's indicating that this mitzvah is like is something that like is not going to be is like I don't know exactly like it's a private mitzvah
right.
in a certain sense.
Yeah, I hear. An interesting question, by the way, on that, which might help answer it or not, is, I mean, it is essentially saying that mitzvah is chayav mitzvah b'dei shemayim, but is this counted as one of the mitzvahs that chayav mitzvah b'dei shemayim? Like, I don't think so.
I don't know.
I also don't know where there's a list of those.
Yeah.
I don't think the Rambam lists them in the own. Yeah, it could maybe. Yeah.
Oh, no, I
Really
think
what
Marlon
you're
is,
Really what you're saying is you're not sure if this is actually that don't actually do it.
Yeah. That's one thing I'm saying. Oh, the reason why I was wondering is like the, and this is another question, but like mitzvos that are only chayav mitzvah b'dei shemayim, only that are chayav mitzvah b'dei shemayim, are all those also for that reason as well? Like that you need, that there's no, it's beyond Beis Din's jurisdiction.
Right.
Yeah. I
um,
think I only said the word jurisdiction because the line "Danon has no jurisdiction" was in my head. But Hashem has no jurisdiction. He's it's all encompassing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Find what you say. Yeah.
okay.
Sure.
That
Yes. Yeah.
I
Mouth that God needs. Yeah.
think define that I'm on informal.
Oh, that's he's gonna say next. I think, or in a little while. I think. Full. I thought he did. I know it from somewhere, so I assume it's from the Rambam.
What was that question?
What are the parameters?
What is one?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Is my dad anytime? Like, no.
Yeah.
That's what I asked.
Yeah. Okay. I thought he says. All right. Let's read it. We'll see. Kol hamachnitan or hamachitan. I think machnit. I always think it means to belittle, and then I realize I'm catching myself doing a short swap. It's not katan.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Cannot.
Oh.
Right. Yeah. So I think it means. I looked it up in a dictionary. Right. It means, but it might be related. It means to tease them. Anyone who teases them, that's at least in modern Hebrew, that's what it means. Or who provokes them, or liban, or pains their heart, or rada behen, or oppresses them. Like look at the footnote on the right. Rada shia abidosam biyachas kasha kamo shali to mochel. So like you work them really really harshly. O ibn mamonin, or who squanders their money or destroys their property. Harze over velotase. That person violates velotase. That's different than what the Rambam said earlier in the Sefer Mitzvos, where he said anyone who's not careful with this violates velotase. This is like has to be an overt act of abuse. And all the more so someone who actually hits them or who actually curses them. That's strange. Is it because it's right? This is the owner. Oh, that's the other weird thing, by the way. It's not mitzvah b'nei. You know why? And I worked on this question once, maybe it was last year. Did I write something on this? No, I didn't publish it if I did. Sword. God's go with a sword.
Yeah.
God's gonna kill you with a sword. Isn't that weird?
I don't know. That's just easy way to die.
But how many people get killed by swords? Especially individuals. Swords only kill you in war.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like you don't. People are not walking around with swords. You know,
Isn't the Martin like people-
plays iron.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting it from one of the Mufarshim that it's referring to war.
No.
I don't know. Somewhere that's in my head. I again, I think okay, maybe it's because I have a brother who collects swords. Swords are extremely heavy, especially back then. Like you cannot. And it's also not a very good killing weapon because the metallurgy was not developed in the time of Tanakh, and so it's very. We're talking like akin to like, and they'll kill you with a sledgehammer or something. You know, like just a very unwieldy, like large thing. You know, so like a knife, yes, you could kill someone with a knife, and if you're gonna mug someone, then it's a good weapon. But like sword is like a warfare type thing, you know, and you know something about that. But that's at least a question. That's not a question on the Rambam, question on the pasuk. I could have sworn I worked on this. I just don't remember the idea. Yeah. Okay.
Well, it is like a sudden. Like, it's not like you like wasting away the sickness or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's
It's pretty sudden.
yeah.
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 Okay.
I was imagining just like I don't know, like bandits like running through the town.
Yeah.
killing people.
Yeah.
Not
Mm.
necessarily like going to battle.
Yeah. I gotta ask someone if bandits use swords. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think swords are. Yeah. I don't know.
All right.
Yeah.
It depends on you know.
Yeah. I guess that's really what we have to figure out is like what are
Kind
the.
of fun and not
Yeah. What were the swords like back then? Okay. Bris Krus Karas Lahen Lamisha Amar Bahai Ha'olam. That's also an eye opener there. A covenant has been sealed with them from the one who spoke and the universe came into being. That's not a name we evoke lightly, right? Like, you know, Baruch Amar Bahai Olam. But I don't even know offhand another place where the Rambam uses that name of God.
Yeah.
And why here? Like we're creating Yesh Me'ayin, or we're talking Yesh Me'ayin here for Shekolzman Shem Soakim Mechamas, that anytime they cry out because of violence, Hein Na'anin, they are answered. Shnemar Im Sa'oki Tak Elai Shamoa Eshma Taka. So now what the interesting thing is that that's a separate hashgacha. There's one hashgacha which is not on them. It's the punishment for doing this avera. And that has nothing to do with whether, or it's not nothing to do with, but like it's not a response to their suffering, the way the Rambam presents it. But this is like anyone who oppresses them, and the weird thing is it's out of order, right? He reverses the token. So the pasuk says, "Im ta'oki takelai shemo eshma ta'akaso v'chara api v'harati esem v'chara v'gomer." So he presents it backwards. Okay. When does this apply? This is when you afflicted them for your own needs. Ina osan harav k'dei l'lamdan Torah. But if the Rav afflicted them in order to teach them Torah, o umanut, or a craft, o laholichan b'derech yashar, or to guide them on the good path, meaning like moral guidance, I guess, harizeh mutar, that's permissible. Nevertheless, lo yinhag behen minha kol adam. You should not treat them like other people. You should differentiate. So that is the interesting thing. Going back to your question, so that's from Mishlei. You should guide them. Oh, you're going to define it in a second. With pleasantness and mercy and great mercy and honor, because Hashem takes up their cause. If they lose one parent, then they're a yatam. Okay, now until when do they have the status of yisomim regarding this? To the point where they no longer need an adult to rely on and to raise them and to take care of them. I think the Tava would like to take care of them. But rather they can take care of all their own needs like any of the other gedolim. So this actually does come up, or did come up in throughout my high school teaching career, because you have kids who have lost a parent, you know, and I always have to remember that I'm trying to think if I had any of them that like deserve punishment in an overt way, but I did have to remember to like differentiate them from the way I treat other kids. Because it's like, certainly nowadays, at what point does a kid become independent? In their 20s, you know, yeah, right. It's like, so that's a real. So it's interesting. It does not go by bar mitzvah though. Is the point, right? Yeah, and then the almana is an easy one, right? She's an almana until she gets remarried. I assume. Yeah. Yeah. At any stage in life. Say it again. Any age, yeah, any age, yeah. I assume so. Yeah.
That's funny that why is the Yasson stop when he can fill his needs?
Yeah, especially if it's not dependent on his needs from the money, the mammon halacha.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I assume you got to assume that one of the effects of being a yason, the psychological effects, is you feel abandoned. And like if you are self-reliant, then maybe that feeling of abandonment changes.
Yeah. Also, if like a person's sort of dependency, like a person's dependent, like feels like reliant on their parents or on their husband,
right?
And then when they lose that person, then have this like feeling of helplessness, even if they can, even if they have means to be able to survive.
Right. Yeah. This would be interesting mitzvah to take up. There's clearly a lot here in terms of the Torah of Vasav, and the Psukim initially also about mistreating the orphans. Yeah. All right. So last half of this, should we look into the question of the Bein thing?
Sure.
Okay, let's do it. The question is, if yedias Hashem is everything, then how do mitzvos Bein fit in? So that as like the scheme of Torah. And so I gave Alrigal Acha's answer, but I figured it actually worked. I had to have a selection of sources here. So I figured.
Let's go to there.
Oh, yeah. What do you call it? I figured that the best Rambam to do for that question would be the last Rambam in the Moreh book. Okay, so let's do that. I got Moreh book here. And we'll just use the pines and the pines. And I don't have it on the screen, so I'm going to use it on the screen. Okay. All right. So this is going to be.
We're not wrong. The pines sound.
It does. I know pines. Yeah. All right.
Do we have any thoughts on the name of God? That he says here?
On the name of God? Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, it might relate to this or whatever we're going to say here.
Maybe, yeah. I do think that it might be related to what you mentioned with the Ani Hashem. That part of why people do these averos is because they feel like they can get away with it. And when you have the being who created the universe, he can respond to them. And there's nothing limiting God in terms of like enacting justice and help and respond to their tefillah, and like I think that the feeling is like if I can get away with like stealing money from an orphan and no human authority is going to catch me, then like it's fine. And like that, this is like the ultimate pulling out the big guns in terms of the one who spoke and everything came to existence. That doesn't explain to me why only here, but like that's all I can do. Like just showing a sense. Yeah. Okay, so we're doing the last chapter of the Moreh book, but we're not doing all of it. This is going to be on page 634. And we're just using this translation. I was going to do the Kafet, but I fear that we won't have time. So I think we'll do this here. Okay, so this is have you been through the Rambam of the Four Perfections? Yeah, it's good to go through every once in a while. Yeah. Okay, so
we
might have gone through it. You're right. I don't remember the context.
Yeah, I think it was something like justice.
It could be. Yeah. Oh, are you thinking of doing static precedent? Yeah. That's the paragraph before. But yeah.
But we did do good. Yeah,
it's possible. Yeah. I go through it a lot. Okay. The first full paragraph there. The ancient and the modern philosophers have made it clear that the perfection to be found in man consists of 4 species. There's a drasha for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet you could work it out.
Hmm.
That's funny. I never thought of that. Okay.
Yeah.
The first and the most effective, but with a view to which the people of the earth spend their lives, la'afuke aliens, is the perfection of possessions. That is, of what belongs to the individual in the manner of money, garments, tools, slaves, land, and other things of this kind. A man being a great king also belongs to this species of perfection. So it's material possessions and status. Yeah. This is like the Erie's explanation of Rashaim.
Hmm.
Is chasing after money and status.
So it seems like 2 different things.
Yeah, but I guess they are.
Isn't that like chavurah?
Bal ruach bal nefesh. Because ruach, you're talking like psychological good, and nefesh being like instinctual, pleasurable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I guess there are possessions though. They're dependent on the society conferring them to you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So causally, in terms of the nature of their connection to you, which is I think how the Rambam is going to group these, then he'll say that right now. Between this in this very sentence, between this perfection and the individual himself, there is no union whatever. There is only a certain relation, and most of the pleasure taken in the relation is purely imaginary. I refer to one saying, "This is my house, this is my slave, this money is mine, these are my soldiers." For if he considers his own individual self, he will find that all this is outside his self, and that each of these possessions subsists as it is by itself. Therefore, when the relation referred to has been abolished, there is no difference between an individual who has been a great king and the most contemptible of men, though nothing may have changed in any of the things that were attributed to him. The philosophers have explained that the endeavor and the efforts directed by man toward this kind of perfection are nothing but an effort with a view to something purely imaginary, to a thing that has no permanence. And even if these possessions should remain with him permanently during the whole of his life, he would by no means thereby achieve perfection in himself. So in the same way as like you have someone who's a king, and then there's a coup, and suddenly he's not a king, or you have someone who is a wealthy man, and then his the stock market crashes or his mansion burns down, he remains exactly the same. There was no actual connection between him and the thing. Yeah. So psychologically, it would be different because the enjoyment of being a king is in in the ruach, like you were saying, and then the enjoyment of having a house is in using the house. I mean, it could be both, right? But in terms of the connection to him, they're both external to him.
Wasn't that? Yeah. Okay. Doesn't that define you? Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
but
you could have a shita and your property is you.
I don't think so, right? Because property is a legal reality.
Right. Maybe.
I mean, unless you're going to extend property to like objects you're physically holding on to right now.
Yeah, I guess. Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
I think so. It is weird they use the word imaginary.
Yeah.
Because it's legality. I mean, the Torah's laws of ownership are real, right? But I think it just means that there's no actual physical. I don't know, but maybe I shouldn't say physical. Yeah, I don't know what word he uses in the Arabic. Yeah, so that's number one. The second species has
There's no. It doesn't have any effect on who you are.
right. Yeah, on your body or your mind. Yeah. The second species has a greater connection than the first with the individual self, being the perfection of the bodily constitution and shape. Sorry, kind of become a perfect sphere. I refer to that individual's temperament being most harmonious, his limbs well proportioned and strong as they ought to be. So I always view that as 3 things: health, beauty, and like strength. Like I think it's just like any bodily perfection, but like there's different types of measures of bodily perfection. Neither should this species of perfection be taken as an end, for it is a corporeal perfection and does not belong to man, but qua animal. So it does belong to man, but not vis-a-vis man's essence. For man has this in common with the lowest animals. Moreover, even if the strength of a human individual reached its greatest maximum, it would not attain the strength of a strong mule, and still less the strength of a lion or an elephant. Meaning, you're never going to, if you want to be the runner, so you're never going to outrun a cheetah. So and you're only perfecting yourself as an animal, great. So you maxed out the human speed. So congratulations.
What do you think that Even that's still perfection.
Right, it is still perfection in man, but he's saying that, but it's man qua animal, and in the animal realm, like if you're really trying to become perfect, then like you fall short of these other animals.
Well, I'm trying to become the most perfect human.
Right. Yeah, that would be the answer, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I still feel like there's a psychological punch to the point that he's making.
Yeah.
Of like, like there is a certain like the guy who's like bodybuilder and like lifting weights, and like he like worked really hard so he can finally like lift something big, and then a gorilla just comes over and picks it up like effortlessly. There is a certain, I feel like there's a certain like shame that he's going to feel, even though it's irrational.
Yeah.
Because like the fact that, well, I'm just not human, like there's something like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to say it. Yeah.
Right. Also, it could be like now that you're saying, oh, I'm the strongest human. So now you're back in saying you're perfecting yourself as a human.
Right.
And now the way to perfect yourself as a human is not through the body.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Meaning that shows you the limits of the category and that you haven't really done anything human.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that other animals can do these things.
Right. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
The end of this perfection consists, as we've mentioned, in man transporting a heavy burden or breaking a thick bone, and in other things of this kind, from which no great utility of the body can be derived. Utility for the soul is absent from the species of perfection. Now, it is interesting because he does say before the individual's temperament being the most harmonious, and there is an advantage as a means in terms of being healthy. He kind of like transitioned though into just talking about strength towards the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, here's where we get to the answer to your question. Well, one answer to your question. The third species is a perfection that, to a greater extent than the second species, subsists in the individual's self. This is the perfection of the moral virtues. It consists in the individual's moral habits having attained their ultimate excellence. Most of the commandments serve no other end than the attainment of this species of perfection. But this species of perfection is likewise a preparation for something else and not an end in itself. For all moral habits are concerned with what occurs between a human individual and someone else. This perfection regarding moral habits is, as it were, only the disposition to be useful to people. Consequently, it is an instrument for someone else. For if you suppose a human individual is alone, acting on no one, you will find that all his moral virtues are in vain and without employment and unneeded, and that they do not perfect the individual in anything, for he only needs them, and they again become useful to him in regard to someone else. So this is a controversial statement of the Rambam. So he seems to be saying that you only need ethical perfection when you're living with other people. And you can see that for a lot of things, but it seems like there are definitely moral failings and moral perfections that would affect you on a desert island, like laziness, for example, or like taiva, anger.
Exactly. More. It seems like he's saying moral things are only those things that, only things that are interpersonal.
So I don't know if he's saying that, and even if you were saying that, where would you then put the other one? Like, where would you put perfections of other things? I'm pretty sure. I'm gonna just look at the copy just to see what he says.
Yeah, I mean, it says the perfection regarding moral habits is, as it were, only a disposition to be useful to people.
But that's not a definition. I think that's an explanation of its limits. Let me see what Hebrew phrase he uses here. So he says the third one. Hu shleimus ha'adam atzmo yosmeshin. Hu shleimus ha'ma'alot hamidotiot. Ma'alot midotiot. Yeah, and ma'alot midotiot from Monoprophim and from Deos does seem to include all moral perfections, not just the ones being on the chavurah.
So then it seems weird that you wouldn't need it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So I'm not sure how well this into work, but maybe it's interactions with things, including people.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let's say like anger is anger in terms of your interaction with a specific stimulus,
Mm-hmm.
or laziness insofar as there's a certain end.
So my problem with that also is he says, if you suppose a human individual is alone, acting on no one, you will find that the moral virtues are in vain. But according to you, then there would really be no case like that, because you're always interacting with things. Yeah.
Yeah, what if you abstract it?
Yeah. I don't sense that he's making that argument. It sounds like he's saying that it's going to be of use depending on the extent to which you interact with people.
Yeah.
It is a weird argument, and I remember Pesach gave a shiur on it once, but I don't remember what he said. So that doesn't help us. But that is one area where he's addressing what you're saying about where Bein fits in. Okay. But then he goes on, he's going to go back to another one. The fourth species is the true human perfection. It consists in the acquisition of the rational virtues. And I bet he says malopsychos in the prophet. Let's see. Malopsychonios, right? Rational virtues. I refer to the conception of intelligibles, which teach true opinions concerning the divine things. Yeah. This is in true reality the ultimate end. This is what gives the individual true perfection, a perfection belonging to him alone, and it gives him permanent endurance. Never heard of that one before. Why can't you just say endurance? I assume it means like you start with nefesh, like of the soul. Through it, man is man. If you consider each of these three If you consider each of the three perfections mentioned before, you will find that they pertain to others than you, not to you, even though according to the generally accepted opinion, they inevitably pertain both to you and to others. This ultimate perfection, however, pertains to you alone. No one else being associated with it, in it with you in any way. They shall be only thine own, and so on. Therefore, you ought to desire to achieve this thing, which will remain permanently with you, and not weary and trouble yourself for the sake of others. O you who neglect your own soul, so that its whiteness has turned into blackness through the corporeal faculties having gained dominion over it. As is said in the beginning of the poetical parables that have been coined for these notions, as it says, my mother's sons were incensed against me. They made me keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. That's your shiur? Yeah. It says on this very same subject, lest thou give thy splendor unto others and thy years unto the cruel. Is that Mishlei? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So he's saying, since it only belongs to you and it's you qua man, and it only belongs to you, then you should seek it. Yes. This is
What do you mean?
Rational virtues, intelligibles, conception of
Endurance.
the true opinions regarding the divine things. Yeah.
Can you explain it in different words that I would understand?
I'll phrase the question in different words. So I got a question which we're not going to have time to discuss, but a great question from one of my Shalhevet students. Title of the email: Chachma and death, and then in parentheses fun stuff. Okay. Question is, I think this is what the Rambam is addressing. Not sure if this question even has an answer, but I was thinking about how Chachma is truly the only thing we take with us when we die. Then I realized I never really thought or learned about what the Chachma actually means in this context. Right? So does Chachma only mean Torah knowledge, or can it also include other types of Chachma which we acquire through our lives? In other words, does this include such areas as psychology or physics, i.e. topics which relate to the world or the universe? I'm assuming this doesn't apply to areas such as art history. Yeah, and this is the question, is like, what is what when we say that knowledge is the ultimate perfection, what do we include in that? And how does knowledge of halacha fit in? How's that Rabag question? The guy asked me cow, knowledge of cow. What was that? Yeah, I mean, that's a big problem, right? It's like, if Deos are only a means to an end, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. This question is beyond my pay grade. And I don't know if there's anyone around who, yeah.
Isn't it? I always thought it was like your attachment to Chachma.
That's what I thought also, and I think that rings more true to me now that we're out of an Aristotelian framework, that like, because in an Aristotelian framework, there are forms that you are merging with, or whatever you do with the active intellect, but here it really does seem to be that all we're getting is closer and closer models. And so it's your attachment to Hashem or to seeking stuff, Yeah. Again, this whole thing that we're reading here has way more questions than answers, but I feel like it's a good way to end.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's go on. So the prophets too have explained to us and interpreted to us the self-same notions, just as the philosophers have interpreted them, clearly stating to us that neither the perfection of possession, nor the perfection of health, nor the perfection of moral habits is a perfection of which one should be proud or that one should desire. The perfection of which one should be proud and that one should desire is knowledge of him, may he be exalted, which is the true science. Jeremiah says concerning these four perfections, thus saith the Lord, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, neither let the mighty man glory in his might, let not the rich man glory in his riches, but let him that glorieth glory in this, that he understandeth and knoweth me. Consider how he mentioned them according to the order given them in the opinion of the multitude. For the greatest perfection in their opinion is that of the rich man in his riches. Below him the mighty man in his might, below him the wise man in his wisdom. By the expression of the wise man in his wisdom, he means him who possesses the moral virtues. This is Hilchos Deios. Yeah. For such an individual is also held in high esteem by the multitude, to whom the discourse in question is addressed. Therefore, these perfections are arranged in this order. The sages, may their memory be blessed, apprehended them from this verse, the very notions we have mentioned, and have explicitly stated that which I have explained to you in this chapter, namely, that the term wisdom, chachma, used in an unrestricted sense and regarded as the end, means in every place apprehension of him, may be exalted. When we say chachma in general, it means knowledge of God. That possession of the treasures acquired and competed for by man and thought to be the perfection are not a perfection.
So I actually want to stop and talk about that for a sec.
Yeah.
That when we say chachma in general, it specifically means knowledge of God.
That's what he says, but if you look at the beginning of the chapter, he says there's 4 definitions of chachma. So read that for detail.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
And what do we mean knowledge of God?
I don't know. How am I supposed to know? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, these I really don't know.
No.
What?
Knowledge of God is not.
Yeah, I really don't know these things
Knowledge of
anymore.
nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said this earlier in the year. All these areas of what the soul is and what it means for the soul to have knowledge and like what knowledge of God is, and how that is related to the soul and how it goes on. With every passing year, I know less and less. You know, so that's where we're at.
Not knowing anything.
Yeah, and that similarly, all the actions prescribed by the law, I refer to the various species of worship and the moral habits that are useful to all people in their mutual dealings. That all this is not to be compared with the ultimate and does not equal it. Right? That seems to be saying that Bein chavurah is not equal to yedias Hashem. Yeah. But preparations made for the sake of this end. So that's how it fits in, though, is preparation. Here verbatim, a text of theirs dealing with all these notions. It is a text in Bereshit Rabbah. It says there, one scriptural dictum says, and all things desirable are not to be compared unto her. Another scriptural, that's Mishlei. Yeah. Another scriptural dictum says, all the things that thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her. That's another one. Mishlei. The expression things desirable refers to the commandments and good actions, while things that thou canst desire refers to precious stones and pearls. Neither things desirable nor things thou canst desire are to be compared to her, but let him that glorieth glory in this, that he that understandeth and knoweth me. I feel like this is probably much better in the Hebrew. The canst thing is confusing. Consider how concise this is this saying, how perfect is he who said it, and how he left out nothing of all we have mentioned that we've interpreted and led up to at length. Okay, we'll have to check that out later. Let's finish it off now, though. As we have mentioned this verse, this is Bekius. As we have mentioned this verse and the wondrous notions contained in it, and as we have mentioned the saying of the sages, may their memory be blessed about it, we will complete the exposition of what it includes. For when explaining in this verse the noblest end, he does not limit them only to the apprehension of him, may he be exalted. So in other words, it's not just yedias Hashem. For if this were his purpose, he would have said, but let him that glorieth glory in this, that he understands and knoweth me, and had stopped there. Or would have said that he understands and knoweth me, that I am one. Or he would have said that I have no figure, or that there's none like me, or something similar. But he says, one should glory in the apprehension of myself and in the knowledge of my attributes, by which he means his actions, as we have made clear, with reference to the dictum, show me now thy ways, and so on. So the mitzvos Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? In this verse, he makes it clear to us that those actions that ought to be known and imitated are loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness. That's chesed, mishpat, and tzedakah. By the way, the mnemonic for the pasuk, I might have mentioned this before, Tanit. That's the order. He adds another corroborative notion through saying in the earth, this being a pivot of the law. For matters are not as the overbold opine, who think that his providence may he be exalted terminate at the sphere of the moon, and that the earth and that which is in it are neglected. The Lord has forsaken the earth. So in other words, this is not like people who hold that the hashgacha is only in the celestial things and not on earth. Rather, it has been made clear to us by the master of those who know that the earth is the Lord, meaning God's hashgacha extends to the earth. He means to say that his providence also extends over the earth in the way that corresponds to what the latter is, just as his providence extends over the heavens in the way that corresponds to what they are. This is what he says, that I am the Lord who exercise loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth. Then he completes the notion by saying, for in these things I delight, saith the Lord. He means that it is my purpose that there should come from you loving kindness, righteousness, and judgment in the earth in the way we have explained with regard to the 13 attributes, namely that the purpose should be assimilation to them. That's a weird use of the word assimilation. I think he means like emulation of them or like integration of them. And that this should be our way of life. Thus, the end that he sets forth in this verse may be stated as follows. It is clear that the perfection of man that may truly be gloried in is the one acquired by him who has achieved, in a measure corresponding to his capacity, apprehension of him, may he be exalted, and who knows his providence extending over his creatures as manifested in the act of bringing them into being and in their governance as it is. The way of life of such an individual, after he has achieved this apprehension, will always have in this view loving kindness, righteousness, and judgment. Through assimilation to his actions, may he be exalted, just as we have explained several times in this treatise. So the answer, this is the second half of the answer here. So interpersonal things play two roles. One is as a preparation, the other is as an outcome of your yedias Hashem and your knowledge of His ways. Meaning you're involved in perfection of virtues and moral habits and Bein chavurah to create a society, to lead yedias Hashem, and to get rid of your own distorting emotions, et cetera, so that you can perfect your mind and knowledge of God. And then the natural result of knowing God is going to be emulating His actions, because that's the only way you can know God. And that's going to result in you doing chesed, mishpat, and tzedakah that stem from your yedias Hashem. So it's a preparation, but it's also a barometer or an ultimate result. Yeah. So, and Hilchos Deios will come on both ends, meaning there's going to be the guy working on Deios in order to get himself to the state of chacham so that he can perfect his mind. And then there's going to be the person who is in Hilchos Deios emulating the Shechina as a result of his knowledge of God.
Right.
Which is the ultimate kiyum of Deios, of the halakha b'drachav, yeah.
Yeah, and that ties in with the use of the word Deos, because it's not just your character traits. Your character traits tied to the perfection.
So can we now go back to our original chavurah, one of them, and say that Deos means embodied yedias Hashem?
Embodied yedias
Meaning when you become a vehicle of Ratzon Hashem in your actions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the pasuk that says in Yirmiyahu, who is the one who knows me? Is it not the one who judges the case of the poor? Meaning when you take care of the poor, that is yedias Hashem. In the sense that, I'm not saying doing the rote action of being the poor, but I mean like this highest level where you know Hashem and you know His Ratzon is Racham Aval Kol Maasav and you enact it. It's like the ultimate extent of knowledge being real to you. Knowledge being real to you to the point where it actually moves you to enact it through your bechira, because you're the only creature who has bechira that can actually, choose to do that. Was there more? This is the extent of what I thought fit that we should set down in this Rambam Bekius year. It is a part of what I consider very useful to those like you. I hope for you that through sufficient reflection, you will grasp all the intentions I have included therein with the help of God, may He be exalted, and that He will grant us and all the people of Israel, being fellows, reachas, that which He has promised us. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them hath the light shined. Amen. God is very near to everyone who calls, if he calls truly and has no distractions. That's interesting. Is that a translation? What is that saying? And has no distractions? He says, Karo v'ma'od hakel l'chol koreh, nimtza l'chol dorish yivakshehu. Doesn't sound like no distraction. He will be found to those who seek Him, to the seeker who seeks Him. In the emes yikra v'lo yish'eh. Oh, maybe that's what it means. If you would call Him in truth and not be turned aside. Okay, fine. Im yichalef nochacho v'lo yit'eh. If you march towards Him and do not stray. Yeah. There you go. And that is the end of year one of Rambam Bekius.